So we're in, right? So we're started. And I would say, well, if we're going to start, I'm going to say hello and welcome back to our little singular webinar. We've got, I am joined by Catherine and Suzanne, and I am really excited today because we're going to do a demo about building interactive graphics, and we're going to keep it simple because we can, but we're going to have to dive into events in Singular in Composer, and events are super powerful. And one of the things that you can do with events is you can make you can expose interactive pieces to your composition. So Suzanne's going to dive into a really basic composition showing events and showing clickable events and triggering different bits of the composition with events. And the good thing about today is, because I was asking you guys when we started, we're not going to use the script editor because we're going to keep this one simple. But just generically speaking, I mean, this goes really, really deep. You can go really. We've had some customers that have done some pretty amazing things when they've gone well past what we're going to demo today. So I think that's enough about sort of an overview. And Suzanne is going to show us the basics of making an interactive touchscreen.
Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Give me a second where I can just pop up the chat to make sure that everyone's seeing it okay. All right. So
is the Zoom okay, everybody? Is it? I'm always concerned about Zoom. Probably. Let's assume it is until someone says otherwise.
Rainy,
go for it.
Right. So where we're going to start today is our resource center from the template library, and we're going to kind of come down to our little lower third example, or sorry, our interactive example. We've got lower thirds on the brain. But I have one that I made earlier, which I'm going to use because it has a better background just for you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. But what you have is you have button A, button B, button C, and button D. So it's a really simple composition. So I've already got my composition navigator up, and to get that again, you just press Control F or Command F, and that just pops up, or you can press this little button at the top. I'm just going to trigger in all the graphics so you can just see what we have here. And what we're going to do is we are going to link the green button with the left bug, orange button with the right bug, blue with the singular at the top, and yellow with the lower third. So hopefully that's all nice and simple, but there are many ways that we can do this. Like most things, It's never as simple as just one way covers everything. But it's about finding whatever's most comfortable for you. Okay, so the way that I like to do it, and this is where anyone who's seen like this little target here, this will show you any of your interactive zones that you've got going. But as you can see, my toggle box is on. I'm just going to take out these so you can see that I'm working on the green button. And again, I'm just going to take out everything I've just brought in. And then I'm going to head over to the events tab. Now, the first one you can select is mouse down, which is what you'll be using for most of these. But you can use mouse up, mouse enter, and mouse leave. Again, they're the most common ones that you tend to use.
Can I elaborate on that really quick,
yes,
Suzanne? Because the verbiage might be a little confusing. Mouse down is also known as just click, and then mouse up is like finishing a click. So a little bit more nuanced. But mouse down is what we're going to go over.
So mouse down is when you push your finger down. Mouse up is when you release the click. So if you kind of imagine like the whole animation of something going, it's kind of that.
Yeah.
Mouse enter is when you say, for instance, you open a link, something like that, you've entered the click. And then mouse leave, these you would use for hover states, and I can show you very quickly on how to do them and why there are two main different ways of doing things. So we're mostly going to concentrate on mouse down, and you can do this on the group or you can do it on an element. Makes no difference until you start doing very basic mouse hover states. So if I add mouse down, and because we're not using anything with the composition script, I'm deactivating that area, and I'm now going to select my composition, and then this shows you every single thing that we've got in the composition, as you can see here. it's complete match. And this has now changed. So if I hover over this, you can see that we have, it says button A, which is, you know, the composition that we're talking to. It's then going to say it's a mouse down event. So the more that we add to this, so if I add a mouse up, you can see there, and it's going to show you everything that you have on there.
The different
so
events,
now,
yeah.
If I click this button, sometimes it works. I think
you have to this is a little tricky thing. You have to deactivate the bounding box, I believe, but
Correct.
it's easy.
Yeah. So
that is,
essentially,
that is correct.
Sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
That is correct. And it is a little bit of a gotcha. So the bounding box, Suzanne was jumping back and forth between the bounding box and the sort of heads up display for what interactivity has been enabled for either a folder or a widget. So if the bounding box is active, then the events will not take place. But if you just have to turn the bounding box off.
And that's just for the preview window, not your final output, just for preview purposes. And it's really cool that you can test events right in Composer. I think that's pretty cool. And then also, just if you guys didn't catch it, Suzanne is in the event tab. So you probably overlook this regularly when you're building your own custom graphics. It's like, what is that tab? I don't care about it. That is specifically for events. So just remember that's where you go to actually create an event.
Yeah. I would say too, Suzanne, could you do me a favor? Just it's not maybe super obvious what you're doing when you roll over that green, the green button. What she's doing right now, she's clicking. You don't see her clicking, obviously. Because, she could set that to mouse enter, or and then it would. There you go. The pointer.
Or change the pointer. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have the pointer. The mouse pointer will get exposed. You can have pointer, progress, move, zoom in.
So none of that really matters, really, those pointer effects when you're on, like if you're in a studio setting and you have a studio monitor, you're using your finger, you're not dragging a mouse over it. So you're never going to see the pointer in the first place, unless your computer settings might be like that. So just keep that in mind.
So the first group, what we did is we did it on the group, and this B button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on an element, and again, it's exactly the same thing. I'm going to go and head to the events tab. I'm going to hit the mouse down. I'm going to deactivate the composition.
And the B button is this orange button right here. Is this next one we're working with? Okay, cool.
And then again, I'm going to select that drop down menu, and then I'm going to hit B because we're in button B or B button, and I know that I'm linking it to that one. So now when
the B graphic, yeah. And you could call those things anything, like in that drop down of the composition drop down, it's reading all of the names of the subcomps that you've built. So if you go back up in the tree, Suzanne, we can see that they're all there. So essentially what you're doing is you're saying, I want this event to affect this subcomposition.
You can see that.
So that's what we're doing. And the mode she's selected is toggle. So it's toggling the in and out moves. So by you mousing down on the B button, you're toggling the B bug composition in and out. So it might be a little bit tricky when you first do this, but you'll get the hang of it. And we actually have a tutorial that covers all of the steps Suzanne is covering. I'm going to drop it in the chat here for you guys to be able to just do it on your own.
So, and it's a very, once you kind of have that down, adding it to say the C button, and then again, if I just turn on this, you can see that we now have active buttons, and you can see what they're, so this is going to the group. So the active area on this button A is that main group. Here it's talking about the main base. So you can see what's being attacked, like where you're attaching that movement and where it's pointing to. So you can always kind of see what you're doing. And again, it's exactly the same for the C button, which is this blue button. If I add mouse down, you can see there that it's jumping, and you can see that active area. And again, just copying the same stuff that we've done before. I always prefer doing it on the group because it's easier, but on this last one, I'm going to show you why why you can always do it on the base, and why that is a really good way of doing it.
On a widget, right? On the widget itself.
Yeah, rather than doing it on the group, you can do it on the widget. So what I'm going to do is, because we know that when we do mouse downs, we're toggling in subcompositions. What we can do, if I then add a subcomposition and I call it hover state, let's go dehover. So now when I come over to this and I go mouse enter, and I also have to do mouse leave, what I can do is I can untoggle that. Sorry, let me unlink the timeline. So it has to be an unlinked timeline. If you link it, it can't find it. So now when I go to mouse enter, I can find this sub composition, select that on both my mouse enter and leave.
Nice.
And then what we're going to do is, just to show that we've done it, I'm going to add in a red button so you can see that it's doing it. And then if I turn that off.
So that's your hover state design.
Yeah, it's just going to be a nice red design. So the other thing with this is, when you have your mouse leave, you need to send it to enter rather than toggle, and leave should be out.
Out animation.
Yeah. You can
That's
see.
cool. Looks a little silly because that.
Yeah, it's just to show
circle,
the general
yeah.
gist. And it's always easier doing that on the base, or the, you know, or a widget that you're doing. You could localize it so it just does it on that circular if you wanted to. Again, you can change the hierarchy on this, so now when I do it, it covers the whole thing. But again, that's completely up to how you would like it to be done.
So if we go back to all the events that you've created, you can see that Suzanne stacked up 3 different events onto that main base. So if you click on the main, or was it on the group? I can't remember.
I did it on the main base.
Yeah, okay. So she's got 3 events there. So you're not restricted to adding 1 event to an element. You can do multiple. They can start to conflict with each other if you get really creative. You'll potentially see that, but I mean, there's logic behind it. So just know that you can do more than 1 event on something, which is pretty cool.
But that is very basic interactivity with a hover state there. And
awesome. So we have a question. I don't know, Stephen, if you want to take this one, but Ben just asked if they can give this to a host and control what they're looking at. I'm assuming maybe at the same time that they're clicking things, you want to also control things. Is that accurate? Like bring in live video feeds?
Maybe they're talking about bringing live video feeds right into the singular composition. You know, that's a good question. And we did a project for one of our big enterprise customers, and we did exactly that. We actually made it so that you could, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This was a pretty advanced project, but we did that where you could actually, the user could click and change cameras. We did that using AWS with their Media Live, if I'm not mistaken. So we can take the Media Live feeds directly into the singular composition, the video feeds directly in, but it requires a you know, AWS Media Live account and that type of thing. So that is technically possible, not possible. We've done it for one of our gaming customers. So it's definitely possible, but it is advanced.
Yeah. Yeah. It just depends on the creativity that you have and what you're sort of envisioning for your show and the things that you want to show. Suzanne and we were all talking about an example before of, you know, you could have a button of a player headshot, for example, on a monitor, and you click it and maybe it brings in their statistics if you're doing a sports show. So it really does depend. Live feeds gets a little more complex, but you know, your sort of creativity, I think, is your limit here.
Mm-hmm.
Did we want to show you? Sorry, go ahead.
A mention on the stay right there on the screen. Suzanne, just so at least mention it. So the send message to composition script, I don't even think, Suzanne, and correct me if I'm wrong, even if that's enabled, it's not gonna cause you any issue. That is really that's the window into, I'll call it Pandora's box. So if there's anybody watching that has some chops in JavaScripting, this is where you do the much more advanced stuff than what we're showing today. And the purpose of today's demo is just a quick overview of the non-scripted interactivity. But in a composition script, if you did have that active and you gave that a name, you know, your event, whatever you'd want to call it, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can have a button that, you know, calls for data, does anything that you can do in JavaScript. So I just want to make you aware that if that is active, it's not going to cause you a problem, but that is the window into the composition script. I shouldn't say the window. It's the, well, I guess that's the best way to put it. That is where
it definitely is the window.
Yeah, it's the window into this composition script, and the window into the composition script is literally anything is possible because you're into JavaScripting, which is pretty cool. So, but that's not for today's demo. I just wanted to make people aware that by default, when you activate an event, it's going to have that on. So if you leave that on, it's not going to hurt anything. That's not going to be the cause of why something's not working. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So then in the real sort of world scenario, once you've built everything, what you would do if you're wanting this to be on a studio monitor, for example, is you would open it up into a control application to get the final output. So Suzanne's going to open it in Studio, and then you'll get that output URL,
there we go,
which you can grab there.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly.
So it looks like she shared that with you guys. So you guys could all open that up on your own end right now and start clicking away if you have touch screens, or just with your mouse on your computer and see.
I am doing that right now and I see nothing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, that's
you got to take the graphic in.
I haven't
User error.
Yeah, I always see that. There is one thing I did want to mention, and I will probably have to get I'll have to share my screen again before we go further. Everybody.
Oh, the buttons are coming in. Yeah,
buttons in now.
And you guys can see the hover state too of that last button.
Yep.
So hold on, I'm just going to share my screen one more time before I jump over to something else. So the one downside of putting it on the group element is, so you can see that on buttons A and C, I added them to the group, but those groups don't have an output. They don't have an animation in or out, so they are always going to be on. So if you start overlapping things, so if you did do, like, say, a slideshow where you wanted someone to click a button and it goes to the next image or the next story, however your use case is, if you do put it on the group, just remember to add a fade. And you can literally make this fade 0.01 seconds, so it's tiny. But as you can see, that is now, and I'll do that again, I'm just copying and pasting. And you can see that button now has disappeared. So like I said, that doesn't make a huge difference with this particular composition, but when you start getting slightly more complex with what you're doing, it definitely will make more of an impact, because then what happens is, you'll start seeing when I build this, you now have this red area. So if you have that overlapping at any given stage, you will find that button no longer works because it can't figure out where you're pressing and what you're pressing on. Whereas if it's right next to each other like that, you can see it's absolutely fine. Does that make sense?
That's a good point.
And this composition is in the template library, so people can download this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The background's a little different, but it's generally the same. We originally shared that output link with you guys, or just to us, hosts and panelists. So it should be in there now. If you want to click on that and load it up on your computer, you can start to click around with the output that Suzanne has built for us today. And then we have a question from Lars, who asks if you can essentially make the buttons visible or invisible the host. If you just change the opacity, would that do it in there, Suzanne, of the button?
Yeah.
You
Can we
change the
see that?
opacity, or if you have it, if you're using the color value, just change the alpha, the color and the alpha of to 0. Either one effectively does the same thing.
Yeah. Did you want me to demonstrate that with another button to show that?
Yeah, can you do that with the orange button just right now?
Okay.
Just really fast, sorry.
All right, hold on, let me share my screen again.
I just want to see, because I've never actually, that's a good question. I mean, then it's intuition based, I guess, for the host of where to click to bring things up.
Sorry, wait. All right.
Oh, so the host can see the button, but it won't be visible in the output. Well,
Okay,
that's
so
not
that's
possible, right?
you'd probably then want to set up an adaptive, so you'd have a host view, and then you'd have an actual official output view. That would probably be a better way of doing that rather than
But even then it's still gonna not.
well, no, because again, the way in which the adaptive works would mean that it would basically be completely off for if you did do it as an adaptive. So
you can explore that. Yeah, you can explore that, Lars. I'm not. That's a unique question we've never had, but so I guess you weren't asking about invisible buttons, but you could do an invisible button. We've got some more questions coming in here.
So
This one is from Mr. Kirby. Hello, Chris Kirby. How are you? I will say that you can do that, and it probably, I think what you're getting at is a full screen with 2 buttons on it, maybe a page 1 and a page 2. Either it's
Stats
layout or a different one. And for that, I think you would just simply use logic layers. I believe that would accomplish what you're doing, which Suzanne is using. I don't even think we've mentioned that. She has logic layers in here. But you don't have, none of them are set to the same thing.
Yeah, so I could change it now so that left and right, rather than just being left and right, I could change that so they're just bugs.
Yeah, so what she's doing here, Chris, is she's assigning, she's making a logic layer for just a generic name called bug, and she's assigning A and B to bug. So now when they can't be in the screen at the same time, which I believe would accomplish what you're asking if you had 2 full screens.
working with the logic layers, yeah. That's cool.
I believe that would cover that.
Yeah.
All
right, we've got just a few more minutes. I wanted to potentially elaborate on Shireen. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but a question about anyone can click. Yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Anyone can click and control the interactive button, but does it affect the other person's screen or output? This is a good point. As you guys have pulled up that output, you can see it's only affecting your monitor. That's what we call on device rendering. So Suzanne's going to set this up on her little touchscreen that she was able to grab today. It's a little blown out, but you get the point. She's clicking the things and it's happening just on her monitor. So this is specifically for like an in-studio.
Again. Sorry if I forgot to do that.
Yeah, it's client side, so you're not going to be affecting others, you know. Now, if someone was just looking at the output, you could have a touch screen where someone is, you know, seeing if I was articulating show, I can be clicking and you see just the output with no interactivity. You could have that as well. But in this example, anyone who's clicking on that link it's an individual experience. It's client-side rendering. It's completely, you know, unique to you, just like any web page would be.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm clicking this and you guys aren't seeing what I'm doing on your local side. This is all just what I've done. I'm pressing here on mine. I'm sharing my screen and hopefully you can see through my camera that I'm actually pressing bits. We thought it would be the best way so you didn't have to look at the blown out terrible way of us doing it. That's the problem. I'm not.
It's blocked out. We get the gist of it.
Yeah.
Is it possible? I got another question. Is it possible to send interactions from one app to another app through JavaScript if I'm running 2 different apps on multiple screens? 2 different apps on one screen. I don't see why not. I would probably it can be said that if I've recommended to operate with 2 screens, 1 program, and 1 touch spread out in this time. I don't see why you can't do that. I may be incorrect. I don't think we've ever had a request for that, or if someone's done that, but I'm pretty sure you can. You absolutely, in JavaScript you should be able to do that, to send events back or to send a trigger back and forth. It can be sent. What scenario do you?
It's not a stupid question.
No, it's an
there are
interesting one.
different, yeah, I mean, so the events feature set is really robust. We're just demonstrating how you can set it up for an in-studio monitor, like what we see in Suzanne. I mean, if you can imagine a proper studio setup with lighting, the host might be running through some things on a touchscreen. But you can also set this up for interactive graphics for your viewers, and that's more complex. It involves embed codes. You can look into that in our support portal, but there's a reason we didn't want to get into that right now, because it does involve composition scripting at some point. So, but for, again, this demo, it's if you want to set up a touchscreen monitor for your host. Okay, great. Any other questions before we wrap it up?
I think we had some good questions today. I think we covered it. If there's more interest in this, if we get more requests in the support portal, we'll do another one. That's what really drives our decisions of when we do these webinars. Sort of kind of canvassing what kind of requests come in, and then to the best of our ability at addressing them. So that's what we've hopefully done a good job doing today. So Catherine, thanks for setting this up. Suzanne, you did a great job going through this stuff. You guys can download the template from the template library and pull it apart. Like Catherine said, it's not identical, but it's pretty close. I don't think you'll be confused by the example. And we'll see you again soon with another Singular webinar. So thank you very much for joining. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.